So hopefully, and yeah. So, anyways, I'm gonna take a few minutes because we just went live. So hello everybody, and I'm gonna take a couple of minutes. I'm on StreamYard, and so I'm basically multi-streaming to YouTube and to Twitch, and I think to Facebook. So I'm gonna go over and check on those real quick. But in the meantime, to those of you who are just joining us on the live stream, hello, hello, welcome, Spidey Librarian here, and I would like you guys to introduce yourselves to my friends Joe Faust, who has Joe. You've done what? You've done one other episode with me. Is that
Yes, we
correct?
talked about spooky stories around Halloween time.
Did you? I don't know if you listened to that episode once I
Mhm.
sent it to audio, but I took a crack that you had made about Black Cat kicking Sabretooth's ass,
Yep.
and I put it right at the beginning of the podcast because it was hilarious, and
It
so
is kind of the highlight. Black Cat. That's one of my favorite Marvel factoids. It's like, yeah, Sabretooth isn't that great. It's Black
yeah,
Cat beats his
no.
ass. So,
It was great. I always try to look for like a stinger like to start the show with, especially if it's funny. And I figure laughter is a good way to start a podcast. So, but and then Maynard. So Maynard and I mean, first of all, we live in Houston together. We hang out. We
Mhm.
went and saw Madam Web together. We have seen many terrible Marvel movies together. So Maynard, feel free to introduce yourself while I
that
go
implies that
around
there
real
have
quick.
been many terrible Marvel movies, and I do not acknowledge that.
Um,
Oh,
I'm Maenad. I don't really, I don't have a web podcast or anything like that of my own. I just really love Marvel far more than is healthy for probably anyone or their pocketbook. So, but I will acknowledge that there have been some stinkers that have come out under the Marvel imprint. Um, Not usually from Marvel Studios themselves. There have been a couple from Marvel Studios I wasn't overly fond of, but I think the real horrors belong to Sony and Fox. Um,
So I'm just gonna say this right offhand because I only heard terrible things about it. I still have not seen it. So did anyone did either of you watch X-Men Dark Phoenix?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I've seen that movie this many times. Oh, that looks like I'm holding up my middle finger. That's number three. I have seen that movie three times.
Like I was
looks
just told.
about it are a little bit more like what the original look was.
That is correct.
I have seen it all of once and somewhat regret it.
Yeah, one's too many. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but okay, all right. So and I see that we've got, it looks like we've got about 5 people with us right now. So I just want to say welcome to everyone who is here. Let me see. I want to go ahead and acknowledge the Mesozoic Mind. How are you doing? And Hail to the Geeks. Hail to the Geeks is a coworker of mine and is a pretty awesome person in general. As I am to Marvel, Hail to the Geeks is to Star Wars. I probably have the second most amount of Star Wars knowledge, and it's because of her. And Matt Cave Gaming is here. Hello, my friend. Good to see you. Dude, I saw that you just hit 7,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel. Congratulations. I cannot think of a more deserving person. Yeah, for those of you, I think probably most of you here probably already know Matt Cave through me. But dude has a retro gaming channel. It's awesome. I try to join him every Wednesday for his live stream. I think I missed this last Wednesday because this week has been crazy. But he's not only a great dude. He talks a lot about the games that he plays. He talks about the context. He will do a lot of play testing of games. It's really good content. So I'm very happy for you, my friend. So congratulations on that. And Sith Apple is here as well. Oh my goodness. All the cool kids are here today, and I love it. I love it. So I think you guys, I don't know, this might not be a treat, and it may be a treat. I have no idea. Um, I think I've said it several times already. This week has been crazy, like just for me personally, and I was barely able to get the stream link done yesterday for this show. I've had no time to work on a script, so I'm off book. You guys are going to be dealing with me unscripted. So, and Maynard, you look like you want to say something.
Is Mesozoic Mind, are you the one that does the Would It Survive YouTubes of like the one that put orcas in the Mesozoic period? Because if that's you, I just started following you and I absolutely love those.
Ooh, I like this. I like this. My guests have questions for the chat. I love it. So, all right. So, I know that Maynard and I saw Madam Web together. It was, I don't know if it was theirs entirely, but it was certainly my Valentine's Day activity. Like that was pretty much the plan.
Came with us.
Yeah. And then Joe, I'm assuming you've seen it as well, right?
Yes, we saw it on Friday though, not on Valentine's Day.
Okay.
Because I
all right.
love my husband, so
okay. Okay,
hey, it
well,
it was his choice. He's also a big Marvel nut, so that's part of why we're married.
Yeah. I mean, you find someone that you got a lot in common with, you lock that down if you can, right? So,
but my girlfriend didn't come because she's afraid of spiders.
Are you serious?
Oh, Mary's terrified of spiders.
I mean, one of my housemates has also got a fear of spiders, but he doesn't mind Spider-Man media. She
was worried about how many spiders there were, like the in the movie, the bit about the crawling across that would have been a big no.
Like, okay, do you guys watch, or have you guys seen The Mandalorian?
Yes.
Maynard?
Some of it.
Okay, so there's one episode where they get marooned on this, I can't remember, I think it was like an asteroid or some kind of ice planet, and there's like a legion of like ice spiders that they have to fight off in order to get back to their ship. Okay, and my housemate who watches The Mandalorian had not seen that episode, and so I made sure to tell him, so you may not, there's a part of that episode that you may not want to see. And he just like it's when you tell somebody something that they may have a sensitivity about, like he kind of stopped, and he's like, so you mean? And I'm like, yeah, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. And he's like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, thanks for letting me know about that. So and so I mean, but yeah, like Spider-Man movies aren't a problem. I mean, it's going to be different, I guess, levels for different people too. So I get that, but yeah, no. Go ahead.
She could probably see it now. I could probably take her to see it now and just tell her, okay, close your eyes for the next half a minute and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we may as well get started because, again, I am off book and we're going to see how that goes. And I know that I have opinions about this movie. I'm pretty sure Maynard does. And Joe, I am very interested.
I have opinions about everything.
Yes. But how many of them go unexpressed?
Probably.
Okay.
Darn it! I should say more. Yeah.
All right.
Should we open with a spoiler warning? Right. I mean, we all agree that we're gonna talk about this movie and we're gonna talk plots, or do we want to give like impressions first?
What I would propose is that for the purposes of this live stream, we go ahead and we talk at first in general about the movie. Avoiding as many spoilers as possible. So we'll talk about things like just the writing or just the acting without trying to get too specific. And then at a certain point, I'll be like, okay, if you're going to stick around any further, we're going to dive right into spoilers. And then we can just let her rip. How does that sound?
Perfect.
That works.
All right. Okay. All right, guys. Here we go. Hey, everyone, and welcome to The Webline, a podcast about Spider-Man and his amazing world. Here, we discuss all aspects of our favorite web-slinger in a fun, informal, but informative forum. I am the Spidey Librarian, and I am off book this week. Didn't have time to do a script, and so I'm just going to go ahead and introduce my good friends, Joe Faust, who has been... He's been a previous guest on the podcast for one episode, and then Maenad, who has been a previous guest for several episodes. Both are extremely well-read Marvel Comics fans, and probably either of them could beat me in a trivia contest. Maybe if it maybe not if it's Spider-Man related, but otherwise I think either of you, I've seen firsthand examples of your comic book knowledge. So anyways, but welcome to the show. We are going to be discussing our impressions of the movie Madam Web, which just released this week. Joe, Maenad, how are you guys doing?
I am doing very well, thank you.
Good. I am very happy to have you here. And as you guys know, this is a podcast that is primarily about Spider-Man. But I think a podcast about this character does itself, I think, some favors when you're at least willing to go with the adjacent properties. I wouldn't call Madam Web a Spider-Man movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's pretty hard to deny that it is a Spider-Man adjacent property, especially for the purposes with which Sony produces these things. Without discussing the movie, I would like to get you guys' impressions about the relationship that Sony has with not only the Spider-Man character in movies, but these kinds of films that they are making, that they seem to be constrained to make at present. What do you guys think of Sony in general for this purpose?
Maenad, would you like to start?
It's interesting. On the one hand, it's kind of cool in that it gets, like, if Sony had full access to all the Spider-Man characters, none of the characters probably in this film would have gotten a movie. And so it forces the deep dive because they're looking for content. And the only way they can get, and Marvel is so vast. There are so many characters, there are so many stories available to tell, that I do think it's kind of fun that we have a situation where somebody is telling those stories, and not just telling the same big character stories over and over. In a way, the MCU started because Marvel at the time didn't have access to Spider-Man and didn't have access to the X-Men and didn't have access to the Fantastic Four. And before Iron Man came out, before Marvel Studios started, Hulk was probably the only character that they had any access to that us non-nerds knew. Maybe Cap. But other than that, like, nobody knew who Iron Man was. If you weren't, if you said Iron Man to anyone before that movie came out, they would have thought of the Black Sabbath song.
You're right.
That's
You're right.
Or the sporting competition, Ironman marathons or whatever.
He was. I mean, I remember those days as a comic book reader, and I would say among Marvel readers, Iron Man was squarely on I'd say the B or maybe even the C tier, like among superheroes. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't Spider-Man. He wasn't Wolverine. He wasn't the Hulk, And yeah, Iron Man changed all that. I would say
B. I mean, he Iron Man and Captain America had a very long run. He's almost always Iron Man has usually been in print, and I would say you can't go long stretches without being in print, without being at least a B-list character.
Yes,
but yeah,
yes.
he wasn't a character that a non-Marvel nerd knew,
right?
And now he's massive, and I think that's a thing that forcing a studio to dig into the back canon for stories can be a good thing. Unfortunately, it can also lead them to not, because the character doesn't have a huge amount of respect that they have to live up to. It can lead them to playing pretty fast and loose and not possibly putting the effort in that they need to really bring out a good story. Morbius.
That's fair. Joe?
I think that's an excellent point. I love that there are movies being made about some of these more obscure characters. And I hadn't really thought of it that way before, but yes, it's great that Sony is sort of being driven to these lengths. I will say that in my Googling about this movie, I saw that Sony has scripts out there, or like very tentative development agreement deals for Jackpot and Night Watch movies. And I was like, oh, Lord. No, thank you. And that, like, I don't see that happening. So there is maybe there is like too deep into the back end you can get. It's like I'm good. I think all the time about what it would be like if I could time travel and go back and find my like 10-year-old self and say, look, here's how it's going to be. There are going to be so many comic book movies out there. You are going to stop going to some of them. And I would set down my issue of the Avengers and go, no, but like, yeah, like it's going to get so bad that like, it's great, but also you can stop now, like.
Right.
Probably not going to be in line day one for that Jackpot movie. Maybe if it's MJ, but I don't like, which Jackpot even, I don't know.
And the thing is, I mean, Jackpot, really? I mean,
oh, and Night Watch. Ugh, Night Watch. That man had his own comic book for like 3 issues, right? Okay, picture Spawn, and then just stop, and then change nothing. That's Night Watch.
That sounds
Marvel,
like
really.
That sounds like something that was done specifically out of spite.
Yeah,
it does.
Probably.
It does. Yeah. No, it's it is an interesting relationship that Sony has with Marvel movies, and of course, Spider-Man in particular. But so what was it? It was in the mid-90s. Marvel was on the verge of bankruptcy. This was when it was just primarily making comic books and, maybe the occasional animated cartoon or something. But they basically found that they could make a lot of money, enough to stay afloat, if they basically sold the movie rights to their characters. And so at that point in time, they needed the money. And so they basically said, hey, who wants to buy film rights to our characters? And apparently there weren't a lot of takers, but there were some movie companies out there that were savvy enough to go, oh, Spider-Man could be valuable. We're gonna grab Spider-Man, and that would be Sony. And then there was Fox that managed to grab the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. And for a very long time, certainly after, certainly up until 2008, when Marvel Studios came along, they didn't have access to some of their biggest banner characters, and so they started the MCU, and they're just like, we're going to make the Avengers, and we're going to start with Iron Man. And so that move proved to be good for Sony for a while, actually. Like, they basically, they're like, okay, we got Spider-Man. We've got Spider-Man. So when they decided to get that movie made, they played their cards very well, and they hired Sam Raimi. And Sam Raimi gave us the first 3 Spider-Man movies, which are the first 2 are great. The third one, it's all right. It's okay. I don't understand the amount of hate that it gets. Yes, I saw that look, Maenad. I don't understand the sheer amount of hate that it gets. It's definitely the weakest of the 3, but it is an entertaining enough end to that trilogy that, I don't have a problem with it being where it is. I'll also just go ahead and make the preemptive argument that the faults that I find with it are the result of Sony executive meddling. So I don't think that's Sam Raimi's fault. Now, then we got the Andrew Garfield movies, Mark Webb directing. I don't know who Mark Webb is, and I'm pretty sure Sony intended it to be that way, because they basically were like, we're gonna just tell him what to put in it, and he's gonna put it in it. And I think that, particularly given the way that franchise ended, that is another big example of Sony. They very clearly just want to make money with this character, and they're going to put their own spin on it, and that tends to screw these movies up, in my opinion. Then along came the Into the Spider-Verse movies. Now, do I credit Sony with these? I do not. I credit Lord and Miller, the guys who are actually making the movie. They were like, let us make a movie. And they did, and they put out a great product. And they knew that Marvel wanted Spider-Man, and I'm pretty sure all 3 of us know about the email leak, the great email leak of Sony's internal goings-on, where commoners like us, found out that there had been discussions between Sony and Disney about putting Spider-Man into the MCU. And I think that the public discovering that had a huge effect. There was suddenly pressure on Sony to do that. And when they did, they basically said, okay, Marvel, you make the movies. You pay for making the movies. We'll take the profits, and we still get to keep him under the Sony banner, but this is a Marvel Studios film, essentially. Like, it's still a Sony film in name for the purposes of rights handling and things like that. But it is, Tony Stark shows up. Events in those movies have some effect on the other MCU films. It's clearly an MCU film. So I credit Sam Raimi, Lord and Miller, and Marvel Studios with all of the good Spider-Man stuff. And I lay the blame all at Sony at an executive level. I lay all the blame at their feet for all the bad decisions, including the Spider-Man adjacent films that they have decided to make. Now, the first one was Venom. And I went into that one skeptically. I was like, oh God, here. Like, I think I took a picture of myself because they were giving away like a free promotional comic during the first, night that it showed. So I've got a picture of myself like on Facebook with the comic, and you can see the look in my eyes. I'm like, oh boy, let's see what this is going to be. It was all right. It was okay. I'm not going to trash it, but I am going to say that I will always have issues with it for not being able to include Spider-Man as a part of Venom's origin. In my mind, Spider-Man is absolutely seminal to Venom's formation, the entity that we see in the comics. When you took that away, I feel like you took away a whole lot of credibility, and I don't even feel like they put enough effort into just trying to change it into something else. They just kind of skipped over it. Then we got Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Or yeah, I think that was next.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
And that was a good Carnage movie. Okay, like it did what I expected a Carnage movie to do, and I will give it props for that. Are they particularly? Go ahead.
Pardon me for interrupting, but I
want
to say that Shriek is in the Carnage movie. So you want to talk again about like, oh, they really like dug into that back canon. I shrieked when I saw her. Like, what? And you know,
and
it has that going forward if nothing else.
Correct me if I'm wrong too, but did some form of the word mutation not creep into the script when they talked about how she had her abilities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe the word mutation was there.
And I was like, how did they get around that? I think they really tiptoed around it, but I believe that was what it was
because
implied.
They used the word mutation and not mutant.
And this is when all the studios were still playing nice with each other, and you know, like maybe there's going to be a merged universe at some point. So
right.
And to call over to the film that we're about to see, Sony definitely loves to find the absolute line on some of these rules.
Oh yes. One thing that Sony also likes to do, and again, this is my this is the tip of the spear for me when I say that they are interested primarily in just making money off of these characters. They like to basically start going, ooh, hey, we've got these team up movies coming up. Ooh, we're gonna make you a Sinister Six movie. Oh, look at we'll discuss it with regard to this movie too. But I mean, like, you know, when they made the Venom movie, and especially I think when they made Morbius. Oh God, Morbius. You know, but like, I mean, they were throwing out references to Venom and, you know, like basically implying that you know, hey, we got the great big team ups coming. They like subverting a lot of their narrative to basically making it known, hey, we've seen how successful the Avengers were, and that's what we're gonna promise you guys.
Exactly that, yeah.
You know, and
it works. The formula works for the Marvel universe, so they're trying to introduce that without yet having that stable of characters that anybody's interested in. But they do like to tease that it's coming. You know, like,
yes.
Remember when Falcon showed up in Ant-Man? It's going to be like that, except the Black Cat. And also, we don't have the Black Cat yet. And also, Night Watch. Yay!
You know, and I mean, like, Sony is not the only one guilty of this, all right? Don't get me started on DC and Warner Brothers, okay? But, you know, for the purposes of this discussion, I feel like this is Sony's cardinal sin. I feel like this is the reason that... I think this is the reason that after I watch a Sony comic book movie, I'm just like, you guys just need to give up the rights. You clearly don't know what you're doing here. And that's, you know, I mean, spoiler, that's how I feel about that's how I feel after watching Madam Web. It did nothing to change my view of that opinion of Sony. It's like, you guys just give it up. You know, remember, Maenad, when we went and saw what was it, 2014's Fantastic or something, Fanforstic? Sure, we'll call it that. I mean, you know, with the Doom who looked like he was made out of melted Saran wrap and stuff. You know, that one.
Oh,
like,
so bad.
Like that was my opinion of Fox at the time. I'm like, you guys need to give up the license to the I don't even like the Fantastic Four that much. And, you know, ironically, go ahead.
I think when we left there, I said there should be a law that you can only screw up a property so bad before they just yank the rights. It's just like, nope, nope, you don't own this anymore. That was too big of a screw up. You can't have it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I felt like the hilarious part of that movie is, and to this day it remains true. The best Fantastic Four film that exists is still owned by Disney at this point. It's called The Incredibles. You know, like that just is the truth. I mean, and you know, I'm not going to have a news section this week because I didn't have time to put a script together, but I'm sure we all saw the announcement this week about the Fantastic Four. And I mean, I don't know about you. I love Pedro Pascal. I didn't envision him as Reed Richards, but you know what? I'm happy to let that see how that plays out, because you know the man is a treasure. I think what sealed it for me was the unbearable weight of massive talent. Have either of you seen that?
With Nick Cage, yeah.
The Nick Cage film, yeah.
Loved it so much. But then I don't know very well the actress who is cast as the Invisible Woman.
Yeah, I don't know.
The guy who plays the Human Torch, Johnny Storm, is from season 4 of Stranger Things. He was Eddie Munson, and I was like, oh yes, get this actor back, get him into a Marvel franchise, please. And then the guy who plays the Thing, I've seen him before, but I don't remember what I've seen him in.
He was a Punisher.
He was Microchip. He was Microchip, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, no, I'm happy again. So, you know. Microchip, I only watched the first 3 episodes of The Punisher because he was basically hunting for Microchip for that first 3 episodes. When they met, that was an amazing arc. I loved it. And I'm not a big Punisher fan either. But yeah, no, that guy's playing the Thing. Okay, all right, I'm cool. You know, this is all a good casting decision. So, all right, let me.
It was interesting because it is a Marvel recast, which they don't do very often. Take a character they've used in one. They've done it a couple of times, but they don't do it often.
Yeah, I really need to do a video about Marvel recasts, because man, we could have some fun with that. So. All right. But anyways, yeah, as we know, Sony has a history here. They have a history with these Spider-Man adjacent movies. And they are not... It's up and down, but I don't credit Sony with most of the ups. I credit them with most of the downs, you know. So with that in mind, let's just go ahead and talk about Madam Web. Now, we're going to try to avoid spoilers for at least the first part of this podcast. However, I know how few people have gone to see this movie. I know that it's not done well in the box office. And clearly that's because people have decided that they do not want to see this movie. And I'm just going to say in short that while I may not blame them, I'm going to put a little asterisk at the end of that sentence. And you know, if you look at the bottom of the footnotes, you know, you're next to that asterisk, I'm going to say this. This is not the worst movie that Sony has made in this Spider-Man adjacent world. And if you say it's worse than Morbius, I'm sorry, you are incorrect. And I feel like that can be proven on a technical level, not just an opinion level. And that you should probably, I'm not going to tell anyone that they should either watch or rewatch Morbius. I'm not going to inflict that on anyone. But I will say this: even though this movie is a movie that has its issues, it has its flaws, and that I ultimately feel is a pretty weak movie, it still has its enjoyable points. It still has points that I just wasn't deriving my enjoyment from derisive laughter like I was with Morbius the entire time. And that
this is not their worst movie, and I would go one step farther and say this is the best Spider-Man adjacent Sony picture. I liked it better than both Venoms. I liked it better than Morbius, and I already like it better than Kraven the Hunter, and that's not it.
Joe, I think you may have I think you may have just started the next stinger that I put on the front of this podcast. So, but I mean, I I don't know if I would call it the best, but then again, after listening to the way you phrased it, I might have to consider it.
Right.
Like I do. I might have to consider it.
It's a low bar to hurdle, but like, yeah, that's it is kind of the best.
Yeah. So that's just kind of what I'm gonna say to kind of get the ball rolling. I would love to hear the initial impressions that you two derived from this movie.
I would probably put it below Venom. I had a lot of fun in Venom. I acknowledge that Venom had a lot of issues, but I think I honestly laughed more during Venom and just had a little bit more fun with that movie.
Well, I honestly laughed more at Morbius too, but
okay, I honestly laughed at the jokes in Venom more,
all right,
than laughing at Venom. I wanted to like this movie. And I wanted to like it more than I did, but I didn't hate it. Like it was a solid movie. I think if I knew absolutely nothing about these characters, I would like it more than I did. And it was probably written by people who didn't know much about these characters. So
I don't know. There are a couple really solid deep dive Easter eggs. I mean, some intern on this film was very familiar with these characters.
Okay, all right. No, seriously, take it away, Joe.
I mean, I don't. Maybe we'll jump into that a little later on because I don't know if I want to spoil too much of it. But I will say I'll give you one for free. I'll give you an easy one. Sydney Sweeney's character is based on the second character in the Marvel universe to go by the name Spider-Woman. Her real name is Julia Carpenter. Julia Carpenter is married, and then eventually divorced and still later widowed in the comics. But when she first appears, she has a husband. So Carpenter is her married name. Julia Cornwall is her maiden name, which I don't think you can actually find out by reading any comic book she's ever appeared in. I think that is only in like the handbook of the Marvel universe that they even share her like maiden name, and they call her Julia Cornwall in this movie accurately because she's not yet married. And so like that is some solid research. That intern
that blew my mind because when she introduced herself as Julia Cornwall, I was like, what the hell? Why did they change that? Why is she not Julia? I had no clue. I did not know that. And again, one of the reasons that I asked Joe to review this movie with me is because he is a fan of that character, and I knew that she was going to be in the movie. So, like, see, this is why I like to. Awesome. Okay, Maenad, I can see that you want to say something.
So I'm actually possibly going to argue as far as how deep divey somebody did, because the fact that somebody who read every comic book about this character might not know that, but if you said, okay, what I'm going to find out about this character is I'm going to go look her up in the Marvel Encyclopedia and just read that entry, and that's it. Then you get this bit of deep dive knowledge, but you didn't get the full breadth of the character that you would have had from actually reading the comics, where you wouldn't have gotten that piece of information from.
That's fair.
I mean, that is fair, and that's a good way to look at it. But I mean, then you have someone like me who knows this character, knows she exists, knows maybe the basics about her, and then was completely flummoxed as to why they made a choice that they did in the movie. I was like, why did they do that? That's an invalid choice. I don't get it. And then, oh, okay, they did. Oh, okay. I'm not, does it really change how I feel about the character in the movie? Not really. It doesn't. But it does clear up a little bit of a nitpick that I had. It's like, why did you do this? So
yeah, and
no.
that's why, and I think that's, I'm willing to give somebody a little bit of credit for it. I think that's smart. That they could have gone, not that Julia Carpenter is a name that resonates with a lot of fans, but it resonates enough. I mean, Spidey Librarian recognizes her, and so they could have just used that name. And I would not have gone into that movie where they call her Julia Carpenter and been like, actually, she's not married yet, so she shouldn't be I wouldn't have been that nitpicky, but somebody was. So, they've got their eyes open in this movie. It's not great, but
arguably they I think this might be Maynard's point here, is arguably, yes, they're getting like some of the minutia right, but some of the things that they're choosing to put into the movie are not as important as other bits of characterization that would make the character more compelling and more likable and more relatable. Instead, they got her maiden name correct.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Am I interpreting that correctly, Maynard?
Well, yeah, I think in terms of like, there have been times where, I'll see a character and they may not be in the books that I've primarily read. So yeah, I'll go look up, the wiki and go to the Marvel compendiums and encyclopedias, because I have several of them. Anyway,
what then, you?
But then it'll be like, so yeah, I'll know this like detail that I can trot out and people go, oh wow, a lot of, but I haven't actually read all the like stories of that character.
Right.
And so whereas somebody who's read all, really loved the stories but doesn't know that minutia might have a better handle on who the character is.
No.
And then of course there's people who've done both, and then you have Tony.
Yeah. I want to take a second to address someone in the chat. The Mesozoic Mind says that no, it's worse. At least I buy Venom and Eddie's relationship more than Madame Web's character. My response to that, Mesozoic Mind, is that that Eddie and the symbiote have a massive advantage over Cassandra Webb, in the sense that their story has been told so many times in the comics. It has been, it has been told, it has been developed, it has been reinterpreted, it has been changed, it has been set back to the status quo. It has been worked on so many times that people instinctively know that story and are like, it's one of those things that people can have, opinions on without knowing too much about it. Whereas Cassandra Webb, I mean, I have a lot of Spider-Man-tastic friends who love the web-slinger, who cannot stand Madame Web's inclusion in the mythology. They don't like that she's a psychic. They don't like the way that they feel that her psychic powers were shoehorned in to fit the spider motif. And again, everyone's welcome to their opinions. That's fine. I don't know enough about this character to really have a say about how Dakota Johnson has portrayed her. I feel like I feel like in one sense you may be correct, but in another sense I also feel like you're punching down from a high place in terms of there's a kind of narrative advantage that Venom has in the in the collective unconsciousness, I guess, that Cassandra Webb simply does not. Does that make sense, guys?
It makes sense, but it also leaves out the fact that means that they had a level of freedom with Cassandra Webb to keep. There's in a shallow pool, you can hit the important points really quickly and have a lot of room to play, and they could have had a lot of room to do their own development without contradicting canon, because there wasn't much.
Right. Okay.
And they did not use that freedom well.
Okay. All right. I mean, I guess in order to analyze that statement, I guess I would ask myself, how much do I recall clearly about what they said of her origin? And well, let's see. God, I don't. Okay, screw it. I'm gonna jump into spoilers now because I don't think a lot of people are gonna watch this movie. So let's. Again, I'm off script. That's what I'm gonna throw the blame on here. But let's see. So mom was in the Amazon. She was pregnant with Cassandra at the time. She was being protected, in quotes here, by Ezekiel frickin' Sims, which don't get me started on that. And he betrays her, steals the spider that she found, in which apparently the peptides in its venom? Was that the line?
Mm-hmm.
Peptides in the venom. Really? Sony, you guys are just hitting out bangers with your scripting here. That does amazing things and has apparently spawned a bunch of spider people that I had never heard of before.
Las Arañas. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Las Arañas. And so Ezekiel kills her. Las Arañas managed to keep her alive long enough for her to give birth. And that is her origin. And how does that sound?
And
okay. I remember it. I remember it because I watched the movie 4 days ago.
One of the things.
Go ahead.
One of the things that got me is, so the spider, the Las Arañas has one of the spiders bite her.
Right.
Yes.
While she is in labor.
Mm-hmm.
And this is some fast freaking venom, because it manages to get from a shallow chest wound all the way into the baby in like a minute. That's some fast moving venom. Like,
well, but what you have to understand is that the peptides in the venom.
And I think I kind of got the impression that there's supposed to be something magical or special about the water that she's in when she gives birth, that the water that the baby is birthed into, that then later he pushes her back into that same water. So I kind of felt like they were implying that there's also some magic in that pool, or something special about the water, the cloudy water in that pool.
Her powers also first manifest when she falls into the water. So you're right, there's like thematically a lot of water going on.
Yeah.
Oh yes. No, there is. I mean, I'm looking back on all of that and I'm repeating it, and I'm like, yeah, this sounds really freaking silly.
Can I ask you though, real fast, and not to defend this movie, but
defend it if you want.
Name 3 things about the comic book character Madam Web, like off the top of your head. What do you know about her?
The comic book character?
Sure.
Okay. Just, so her full name is well, her first and last name is Cassandra Webb in the comics.
And
she is she is an elderly woman in the comics. She's blind. She is always sitting. I don't know if she's paralyzed, but she doesn't move around much.
Yes, she has a nerve disorder.
Yeah, and she basically has psychic abilities and uses them to basically give Spider-Man a bunch of riddles pertaining to the web of life.
By the end of this movie, Cassandra Webb, you've got all of that. You've got a Cassandra Webb who is in a wheelchair and blind and psychic, and the movie is set 20 years ago. So if Spider-Man, she moves into the Spider-Verse proper, she will be older. She'll be like 50.
She will
which is
be
not that old, but like,
right.
So, I mean, they gave you what you asked for. You know what I mean? Like they hit all the high points as far as I'm concerned. The origin about like being Peruvian is wild, but in the comics she's a mutant and they can't touch mutants, so that's a little bit, we got to give them that.
Okay.
And then there is a story in the 90s called The Gathering, where they took all of the like spider adjacent women like Maddie Franklin and Julia Carpenter and Madam Web and threw them all in a box and shook it up real hard and then dumped it out. And they all got different powers. This is like Julia Carpenter became the new Madam Web for a bit, and then they kind of retconned all that. But like that's where Maddie Franklin got her like big weird iron spider leg powers, and those used to belong to a woman named Charlotte Whittier, who is not in this movie, but like good riddance. So like it feels to me like somebody understood the assignment, right? Like they got you where you needed to be to get this character into the canon. It's not a very good movie, but it is at least like comic book accurate, like to a pretty astounding degree, frankly. Like they got Julia Carpenter's maiden name right. Like,
and that's what I mean though about like the pool was shallow. So yeah, they hit everything that they needed to in the pool.
Yeah.
But I was talking to a friend about the origin story pieces and the plot holes in the, how does an infant whose mother is deceased and therefore cannot be, and was born outside of a hospital, like in a magic pool in a mythical group, how did she get her American citizenship recognized, get back to the how did she get back? Who took her back to the United States? Who told people who she was? Who kept that box of her mother's stuff with her whole life? Why was she in the foster system? Because an infant would get adopted, not be in the a white healthy infant gets adopted, does not end up in the foster system. Also, you said that you hit on that in the comics, the reason she's in the wheelchair is the disease that she has.
Yes.
Which it mentions that she's going to have, but then cures with the spider venom, so she doesn't even know she has it until she gets crushed, and now she's in the wheelchair because of an injury, instead of the thing that put her in the wheelchair that they acknowledge that that they then wipe away for most of the movie so that she can be running around.
Oh, I think it's I do think it's the nerve disorder that puts her in the wheelchair at the end. We talked about that, my friends and I, as we left the movie. And then and I'm giving this movie too much credit. Like I am writing in my own backstory, but when at the end of the film, she kind of hyperextends her own powers to save everyone, she burns out the venom that has been holding her disease in check.
I mean, that I get that you're trying to save the story to a certain, but she also clearly got squished by falling debris. And I think, and then she's in the hospital, and then she's in the chair. I think it makes a lot more, like, it shows her eyes being damaged to make her blind. She gets electrocuted. It looks like all of the things that put her in the chair happen as physical consequences of that fight. Like, I suppose you can headcanon that it was because she burned out the power to get that she burned out one power to get the other power, but nothing in the movie actually indicates that.
For sure, that's true.
It would have been, if you wanted it to be that, you could have done something to visually show that. Like, you could have done something where where like her body glows and all of the glow comes up and concentrates in her head to kind of give you this image that she's pulling all of the power that's been holding her up into her mind to give her access to this other ability. There are ways that you could have done that, and they didn't choose to do that.
I mean, again, it all comes through in the writing, and ultimately what the actors decide to do with it. But yeah, like I mean, Joe, I think that your headcanon to justify that that occurrence with Cassandra Webb, I think it's perfectly valid. I also think it's perfectly valid that if they had wanted to make that explicit, they could have done it, and they not only could have done it, they could have done it quickly. You know, I mean, they blinded her and at least to my mind, crippled her in like one quick stroke, essentially. You know, but you know, I've also seen things that weren't shown in a movie later justified, you know, by the scripting or whatever, you know, basically justifying other people's headcanon when they make those kinds of assumptions.
Yeah, they'll get into all of this in the sequel, you know? Madam Web 2.
Oh yeah, Madam absolutely. There's and you know, the Web Vengers, you know. So
I just realized they could have done something really cool if they wanted to go the direction you were talking about, where every time she gets a vision, she gets shakier and becomes less, and to show that the visions are that each vision she has is putting a strain on her body.
Bless her heart, Dakota Johnson was not up for all that. Like,
all right, I guess let's talk about. I want to talk about the acting, but before we get into the acting, let's just talk about the writing in general, which I feel encompasses things like casting as well. Because I want to talk about they I think when you go to watch a superhero movie, there's going to be a certain amount of suspension of disbelief that you're going to need to engage in order to enjoy the movie. I get that and I acknowledge it. I also feel like there are superhero movies that ask you to leave way too much of your brain at the door in order for you to enjoy the movie. And you know, my catchword for this is verisimilitude. You know, we acknowledge that Spider-Man unfortunately is not real, okay? But within the storytelling, the narrative confines of that, we want to make that story as realistic as we can. You know, it makes it so that there's an internal logic and that we can, you know, we can kind of be like, okay, I see why that would happen, not just because the storyteller says it. I feel like in Madam Web, they basically, they commit several cardinal sins. They do a lot more telling as opposed to showing, which I feel really clogs things up in a lot of senses. Two, so much leave your brain at the door here. And I'm, you know, Maenad, when you were talking about how we got this baby to the US, who had the box, all that other stuff. I mean, like, maybe there's an explanation, but they sure as hell didn't decide to give it to us.
I'm not as hung up on the baby. I want to know how she flew to Peru for a week.
That's exactly what I was getting at.
Still driving the same stolen cab. Like,
yes.
What did you
like?
Park it somewhere?
Like you're a fugitive from the law and you decide to go to Peru for a week. How did you do that? You know,
while he supposedly got this super like modern, but he stole it way back then. Like, he even mentions if anybody goes to a airport, we'll get them.
Right.
Yeah.
And then boom, she's off to Peru because sure.
You go to an airport, if you use a credit card,
like,
you know.
For the woman that they're traveling with. He's like, no, don't look for her. I only want the girls. You're like, idiot. Like, yeah. That entire piece is so ridiculous, predominantly because she's psychic. Like, she can have the like bond, she can have that whole scene from her apartment. You know what I mean? She can astral project down to Peru
because she does.
Like, you know, learn.
Or
like,
when she hits the water, when she hits the water and activates her powers, that could have like sent a shiver along the web to the guy in Peru, and he could have come to New York to find her.
Yeah. They could have had an old woman like nod to the character Madam Web would be, like, you know, there's a woman on the subway who kind of at one point is like, "Are you all right, sweetheart?" But like she could have been wearing big glasses and just been like, "Yeah, you need to run." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they could have cleaned it
that
up.
would have been cool. That would have been cool. I'd have been like, "Oh,
really cool."
Yeah. No. But yeah, I mean, like there is just so much stretching. There is so much tap dancing on just illogical stuff. And let's see, the Mesozoic Mind makes another point. He said that the Peter line is awful. Maenad, I imagine you'll have something to say to that. But about her listing off the baby names, and then up goes the balloon. I think this is what you
line, right? Like
there technically isn't. There technically isn't. Maenad, you wanna field this one?
Well, I mean, yeah, they are just that. First of all, there's no reason to have had that whole sub thing in there. Like, and if you weren't a Spider-Man fan, you actually could have probably gotten out of that movie without realizing who that baby was.
Right.
Right. I don't remember, did he have Parker on his, like, did anybody ever even call Ben Parker?
Yes, for sure they call him Ben
Parker.
Well,
they do call him Ben Parker, but I don't remember seeing it on like his uniform or anything like that. Yeah,
because like that went past me the first time, and it wasn't until she mentioned her brother Richard that I was suddenly like, oh wait, that's that Ben, who I don't believe has ever been a paramedic in his backstory.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair though, there is so much that's unsaid about him. Like
I always get the impression he worked in like a factory or something, like very blue
you got collar. You got that from the Andrew Garfield movies, probably.
Okay.
Yeah. Which, I mean, there's nothing that says that he couldn't have been that in the comics either. But the comics also say that he tried his hand at stand-up comedy and failed that too, and it's just like Ben, first of all, let's just talk about Ben's inclusion in this movie real quick, because unfortunately, there's not much to say. He is Cassandra Webb's partner, so Spider-Man connection to Madam Web, I guess. But like, it seems like he's there just for the purposes of that, and then also the purposes of being related to the unborn baby that we all know is Spider-Man. And that's really it. He takes the 3 teenage girls in and everything. First of all, fine. If you want to use Ben for that, I'm not going to raise a stink about it. Okay. However, if you are going to cast Adam fricking Scott in a role like that, I said this about Sally Field as Aunt May. Okay. Don't make them just a prop. Okay. Adam Scott is an excellent comedic actor. I always enjoy seeing him. I'm rewatching The Good Place right now, where he plays one of the demons, and he's so much fun to watch. He was great in Parks and Rec, and it's just like, why are you, like, he is criminally underused. But I can't really make the argument that Ben Parker needs to be used very much in this story. It's like you certainly could have told it without him. And I think at the end of the day, that would have been the better call. But Sony gonna Sony.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. That whole subplot of, oh, look, Peter's getting born. It's unnecessary on every level.
For those listening, I am rolling my eyes derisively.
Maybe that's not Peter. Maybe that's Kane.
Oh boy, and with one line, Joe derailed the whole thing. That's the Scarlet Spider precursor.
Right? Sony's going to be like, okay, you can have Tom Holland in your Spider-Man movies, but we're going to build this whole Spider universe of all your D-listers. It's
going to be Kane. He's going to be played by Adam Scott. But yeah, I mean, again, I first of all, I like the character of Uncle Ben. Okay, I think we all do. I like Adam Scott. I just didn't really see any place for either of them in this movie that improves it, I guess.
And it took up narrative space that could have been used to actually flesh out the characters that were intending to be focused on.
Yes. Well, let's start talking about the other actors. Then, do we want to begin with Dakota Johnson?
Oh, let's only talk about the actors. She's not great. She's not great. I mean,
for my part, I go into this not knowing much about the character. Aside from what I told you when you asked me, I'd go into this not knowing much about Dakota Johnson, really. I know that she's an actor person who gets in front of a camera and says lines. I haven't seen a lot of her stuff. For the character that they have crafted for this particular movie, I don't have any particular complaints about Dakota Johnson. I'm not saying that to praise or defend her, by the way. I kind of nothing her. Like, she is a woman who has been an orphan and has apparently been through the U.S. foster care system. She lives by herself, and she suddenly starts getting these flashes of insight that she doesn't understand, and then suddenly has to protect 3 teenage girls, which, if she has an emotion that she projects during this movie, it's, I am so done with this. I don't want to be dealing with protecting 3 teenage girls. And I get that. As someone who not only doesn't have kids, but who also works with teenagers, I get that sentiment, But I didn't see anything that she did that was particularly compelling or that made this role any more interesting than it otherwise would have been. What do you guys think?
I can defend her just a little bit with a comment that a friend of mine made, where he said that her line delivery is really vacuous. It's very empty, but that actually sort of helps build the idea of a character who is shell-shocked by this experience beyond what she knows how to understand. Like everything she says is sort of lacking in any real emotion, but maybe that's how you interact with the world when you just found out that you're psychic and that your mother was killed by Peruvian spiders.
Maenad?
To me, it felt like she was trying to do what Kristen Ritter did with Jessica Jones and didn't quite pull it off.
Oh, God, when you put it through that lens, that's a burn.
I actually liked Kristen Ritter as Jessica Jones. I thought
I did too.
I thought she portrayed shell shock incredibly well.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Right.
And I have to say, again, the thing about her big trauma, I think, I'll put it this way. I am a person who was adopted as an infant. So I went through and she even says that her adoptive, she calls them foster. They wouldn't have been foster. They'd have been adoptive. You don't foster a baby. Babies get adopted.
Okay.
At 30 years old, my relationship to my biological mother was vague curiosity because I had parents who raised me and who loved me. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that her, I don't need anybody, I don't care about anybody, and I'm all alone in the world, character arc was about having been orphaned as an infant, just didn't work for me because that's not. And because she starts the thing off, she should have been more emotional and more engaged, at least up until O'Neill's death. From that point on, I think she can start acting more shell-shocked, but not enough has happened to her yet to justify this bitter, detached character that we see at who won't go to anybody's parties, who doesn't make plans. You know, she's portrayed as already this very distanced character right from the opening, and they never really tell us why she's like that.
Yes, I strongly agree. Yes, that she was adopted as an infant, if anything, should fuel her empathy, because she's already, she's already had a life lesson in the fact that love doesn't come from blood necessarily, and she works as a paramedic. Like they had the opportunity to build this character that like just likes to help people, and that was already kind of baked in. That heroism is already primed and ready to go, and they made a conscious choice to have her reject all of that for basically no reason, just so that she could learn a valuable lesson in the end and like come around. And honestly, she drags Ben Parker down as a consequence, because he puts up with her shit. And I do like, though, if we're going to talk about Ben Parker, I want to very briefly say I do enjoy that they tell her that with great responsibility comes great power. I'm like, that's like, you got me on that one. You got me there.
Okay, so I feel like I should comment on that, because
you hated that so much.
Look, Sony, for God's sake. I know you're telling a wannabe Spider-Man story here, okay? I know you're doing that. But you don't need... before they uttered that... Before he uttered that line, I had already gotten the whole, like, she's getting these powers and she has to use them responsibly. Like, I was already getting that. Like, and I was actually okay with that. I was like, okay, that's subtle, that's fine. I don't need the statement in every movie that you make that doesn't feature Peter, okay? Like, and if you're going to use that line, then you better kill the person who said it. That's tradition, okay? That's tradition, and you broke it. No, but I mean, seriously, like, I just, it felt unnecessary. It really just felt unnecessary, and I already have so many issues with what they have decided to do from this movie, just from a technical standpoint. I mean, when we get to Ezekiel, get ready. I'm going to get on the soapbox, and it may be a while before I get off the soapbox, okay? But like, stop it. Stop it. We realize you've got that hammer. Okay, we realize you've got that power. Okay? And out of politeness, I'm not going to say the next part. Okay. Anyways. Let me think. Oh God, I had something I wanted to say, but yeah, that did irk me. That did irk me quite a bit. Let's talk about the other actresses. The three teenagers are the ones that that I've specifically got in mind. First of all, I just want to say I recognized all three of them. I've at least heard of all of them. And I was happy to see that they were in this movie. I recognized Celeste O'Connor from Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is a movie that just at the end made me cry like a little kid. Sydney Sweeney, I mean, I haven't watched anything she's been in, but I keep hearing about her from like the show Euphoria, and then is it Isabel Merced, I believe? I mostly know her from I think she was in the Dora the Explorer movie, which she did a great job. I was thoroughly entertained by her. But these characters are that I've all heard of. And for the purposes of artistic license, I'm not going to criticize the fact that they're all about the same age. Because I can tell you in the comics that Julia Carpenter is a noticeable number of years older than, say, Maddie Franklin or Anya Corazon. So I'm just going to be like, okay, all right, that's an artistic liberty that, I'm going to not get hung up on, essentially. The three teenage girls, I liked them. I felt like they had maybe not the most developed personalities, but like, I mean, especially like it when Celeste O'Connor gets to clap back at Cassandra a few times, Um, I don't know. What do you guys think of these characters, these three future Spider Women who they don't really say how they're going to become Spider Women? They just say that it's a given that this will happen.
I would so let me very quickly just first say I think Sydney Sweeney is a real talent. She is excellent in the first season of White Lotus. I think she is an actress that is going places. She is probably going to look back on this movie with a little bit of embarrassment because it's not great, but I do genuinely think she's a very talented actress. So all credit to her,
Okay.
and the other girls as well. I agree completely that they are not very well fleshed out, because we spend so much time talking about Mary and her pregnancy and, like the sort of secret origin of Spider-Man that is the B plot of this movie. But here again, like if I asked you that same question about that I asked about Madame Web, like what, give me like your like quick impressions. Like the three girls, I think, carry the primary personality traits of their comic book equivalents, right? Because Maddie Franklin is like a spoiled brat and a tomboy, and we get that. And Anya is like very smart. She's a science chick, and we get that from her. Julia Carpenter, I feel like, is like, I mean, she's a mother, and she's the mom of the Avengers, honestly, when she's shown with them as well. And you've got Julia in this movie always trying to sort of broker peace, and like she wants everybody to be happy and get along.
Right.
And
yes.
So, I do think that these young women portray their comic book equivalents, as best they can, given the sort of minimal amount of script opportunity that they have.
Agreed. Like, again, this is a movie that I feel has a lot of, maybe not a lot of, but it has some good moments in it. But those moments are not enough to save the film because, again, they're given crap to work with,
I agree with Joe. I think all of the girls did great. I think they each really came across as real personalities. And also I think they did very the one place I will give the writing a credit is that they all came across as very believable teenagers. These people write teenagers much better than they write adults. Maybe that says something.
Yeah.
But that said, I would have liked to see a little bit more. Like this clearly, the end of this movie made it very clear that the intention for this movie was a setup.
Yes, it did.
I want to follow up with that, but keep talking.
I would have liked to have seen more. In the one place I would have liked this movie to be more overt, is I would have liked to have seen a little more clear foreshadowing of not who they will be, because they gave us that. They gave us that without, that wasn't even foreshadowing. That was just like, here's a vision of the future, and here's them being these people.
Right. You get that several times. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have liked to have seen less of that and more, I guess, a subtle foreshadowing of how they become those people.
I would have appreciated that too. And I will begrudgingly acknowledge that wasn't absolutely necessary, but I think it would have improved the movie overall, like one of those things. Like I think, Maenad, I think when we did our retro review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, You said something that I was like, oh yeah, that would if they had taken the first 7 or 8 minutes that they had dedicated to the parent subplot in that movie and replaced it with Harry and Peter at that age, that would have improved the movie dramatically. And I was like, yes, absolutely. I feel like along those lines, if they had taken the Peter Parker baby thing and taken all of that time and either put it into giving us a little bit more of a glimpse of the girls or Madam Web, or splitting the difference between the two and just giving each a little bit more development, that would improve the movie greatly, I think. Like, there was something that was completely unnecessary, and if you had just cut it out and then taken that time and put it into the people who actually are germane to the story, you would have had a better movie.
Now that you say that, it makes me think that there's somebody in the executive level at Sony that is super obsessed with Peter Parker's parents. Because they keep shoehorning them in to these movies where, in a way that takes away from the movie that they're actually doing. Like, I don't know why you're so obsessed with these characters, but you think they are way more important than they are.
Yeah, no.
I wonder if it's a Batman thing. Like, since we have to watch those pearls hit the alley in every single Batman movie ever, I wonder if somebody is just like, oh, you got to do his parents. Like, even though his parents aren't really part of Spider-Man's story.
Not
in the way that, like, Batman being orphaned is Batman's whole deal.
Yeah.
Spider-Man being orphaned is not really his thing,
Yeah. No, I agree completely, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, again,
let me
go ahead.
Let me
go
jump
ahead.
off, since I wanted to follow up with a thing that Maenad said, and since I just brought up Batman, and you can bleep all of this if it's profane, but Madam Web, when we got to the very the last 30 seconds, the movie is closing, and I thought to myself, oh my god, I have just watched the pilot for Gotham Knights. Not the more recent one, but do you remember like the girl power Gotham Knights on the WB?
Birds of Prey?
Thank you. Yes, Birds of Prey. Like, that's I got to the end of this and I was like, holy fuck, I just watched Birds of Prey for 2 hours. Like,
when we came out of the theater, when we were standing in the theater thing, I said that exact same thing, that they were redoing, that they were doing a Marvel version of Birds of Prey.
Yeah. And they should have, like, and now this needs to make the jump to the small screen and be like, an ongoing series on Disney Plus. And it'll be equally terrible.
Oh.
And have the exact same soundtrack, actually.
Yeah, but I literally, Tony, I think that was why Tony started laughing, because I said that exact same thing.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, if we both saw it, then it must be true. This is big time Birds of Prey vibes. Yeah.
Oh no, I mean, and I didn't watch much of it, but I certainly understood when you guys said that. I was like, I'm envisioning that meme, of the puppet that's looking one way, and then on the next frame it's giving you the side eye. Like, okay, we're just gonna move on now. So. Okay. All right. I guess we're here. I want to talk about Ezekiel Sims. Okay. So, first of all, I want to ask, have you two read the JMS run on Amazing Spider-Man that includes the Ezekiel Sims story?
Yes.
Maenad? Okay.
I haven't read that.
It is a strange story. It is also, in my opinion, a very good story. It is one of my favorite Spider-Man stories ever. In this story, essentially, Peter encounters an older man who has his powers. and is like, "What the hell?" He sees this man sticking to walls. They eventually catch it up, and he's like, "Hi, we need to talk. We need to talk about your powers, Peter." And so, I if I remember correctly, he comes over to Peter's house, tells him who he is. He's like, so yeah, here's the thing. Um, your powers may not be the result of radiation. They may just be the result of the spider that bit you. Essentially, it comes down to your powers may be mystical slash totemic rather than the result of,
Science.
positive radiation poisoning, essentially. Yes, exactly. And like, he basically says, this is a thing that has been going on forever. And he starts telling him about like other animal totems and how they may or may not be present in the incarnations of animal-based foes that Spider-Man fights, like Doc Ock and the Vulture and Rhino and stuff like that. Ezekiel, I believe, got his powers through, I believe it was some kind of ritual, I think. And Joe, please feel free to correct me if I screw something up here. But essentially, he wasn't the one that was meant to have those powers. He used those powers to basically create a successful business for himself. He was a man of means. He could get around the world, no problem. Very jet setting in a lot of ways. But the thing is that he also knew that things were going to come for him. And so he eventually kind of lulls Peter, like he lures him to, I think it's the Amazon, trying to, under the guise that these things are coming from you and I can protect you, kind of thing. And it turns out that he's going to sacrifice Peter so that Peter is the one that suffers his, in the movie they call it a curse, but it's just, like he shouldn't have been this. They were going to come, like things were going to come after him. So he was hoping to sacrifice Peter in his stead. And eventually he realizes that Peter is the one who deserves his abilities, and he frees Peter. He becomes kind of an on and off ally that Peter never fully trusts afterwards because, But essentially, that's who Ezekiel is. He's no angel. I'm not going to say that he is a good guy by any means. I am going to say he is not a stone cold Terminator T-500 or whatever it was Arnold Schwarzenegger was in the first one, who is hunting down women before they reach the age where they can harm him and trying to take them out. And I really feel, because I think of that character, and I made a YouTube short about this, and I really wish it had gotten more traction. But in my opinion, like, Ezekiel is a character that needs to show up in the MCU. He's a character that I feel would be a good mentor for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, especially at the point where they left him in No Way Home. And personally, I think if you're going to cast Ezekiel, you should use Nicholas Hammond, the very first live-action Spider-Man, to play the part. He's the perfect age for it. And unfortunately, they cast a younger guy who is apparently eternally youthful from the peptides in the spider venom, and essentially they make him into the Terminator. And God, whenever he spoke, I just wanted him to shut up. Do you know how much I'm paying you? Like, yes, we can see that. You don't need to tell us, kind of thing. I don't know. I have so many issues with this character, and I realize I'm coming at this one from the perspective of someone who is just immersed in Spider-Man lore, knows about this character, probably likes this character, who more than a lot of other people who have even read this character do. I realize there's a certain amount of irrationality, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to cop to here. But God, I'm never going to forgive how he was portrayed in this movie. Okay, all right. You guys can talk about it.
He's not eternally youthful because in the vision of his death that they give us multiple times, his hair and beard have gone gray.
Right, because that's how he's portrayed in the comics, and then they need you to see that.
So he's just, I don't know, delayed aging, so that they
close enough.
Explain, yeah. And it's another piece of okay, well, we have to hit this point, but we're not going to care about how we get there, really. Yeah, this character was just portrayed as somebody, and he keeps saying, I had nothing, so I'm going to be okay with doing this because I deserve more. And I feel like that's just such a give your villains some better backgrounds, okay? Please stop making I was poor a villain background.
I feel like what they were doing was they were taking parts of Ezekiel's backstory and then twisting them for their own ends. And then also they were trying to, I don't know, I felt like they were trying to blend an aspect of Moreland in with him as well.
Yes.
Which, he wasn't trying to feed on these girls or anything that Moreland would do, but he just kept coming at them, which is definitely what Peter had to put up with the first time they fought. And it just, I was just like, don't do that. Don't do that.
Also, it never explains exactly how getting the spider made him rich. There's no pointing out medical, whatever medical miracle he managed to use the spider to create that made him super well. It's almost like just this totemic thing. I have the spider and it made me rich, but we don't really get any world affecting difference that made.
Yeah, I agree. He's just there. He is literally there at the beginning to kill Cassie's mom and take the spider, and then he is there to hunt the girls. And I don't care for this version of Ezekiel. I care, however sporadically, for the version of Ezekiel that is in the comic books. This guy, and again, the actor's name I think is Tahar Rahim. Nothing against the actor. Okay, he came to play a part. I still wanted him to shut up. Mesozoic Mind says that his mouth didn't match his lips, which I think I might have noticed that. But I was so distracted by just my seething hatred of how he was portrayed that it didn't really register to me. Yeah, Sony, that is another thing that I'm just never gonna forgive. You didn't put Spider-Man in the Venom movie. I get it, but I still don't forgive it. And this version of Ezekiel, if I could spit venom, I would at them. I totally would. This is one of those rare I'm really mad about this. So, all right, okay. Are there any other? Do we want to talk about any of the other actors? And actually, I want to talk just a brief bit on Anya's character, because one thing that made me sympathize with her character is when it was explained that she lived in the same apartment complex that Cassandra did, and that her dad, who had basically gotten deported and never told her that that was a danger that they faced. He's just gone one day, and now she's living on her own. I just want to say, like, I mean, that is only touched on briefly, but like that scenario, like when it became clear what was going on, like kind of touched off a little bit of a holy crap, that must be terrifying, and to have to keep it to yourself too. Like no one to go to or anything, and I'm just like, Jesus, that is like, I really, I don't know if that's true of Anya in the comics. I would imagine Anya is probably the one that I know least of the three, but I like this version, I was like, oh my God, like
Anya in the comics is the daughter of a single father, and they have a close relationship, but to the best of my knowledge, there was never a deportation storyline.
Yeah, and I believe he's Puerto Rican, so they are technically American citizens. Her mother was Mexican, and her dad's Puerto Rican. But I think that one is a change I'm willing to forgive. It doesn't invalidate the close relationship with her father, because they do make it clear that she cares a lot about him.
Right. Yes.
And that is a thing that really happens to so many people. And so I do kind of like that they highlighted that as an issue in our world, because that really that's not a comic book problem. That is a thing that really happens to real kids.
It is, again, it was one of those things that, like, I would argue that it pulled me out of the story, but it pulled me out of the story in a good way. I feel like it kind of deepened was initially a fairly shallow well of sympathy that I had for her, and I was just like, oh God, no, that's terrible.
I know they did it basically because they needed to establish that nobody is looking for any of these three girls. Right. And because she has such a close relationship with her father in the comics, like her father would, if her father were there, he would be looking for her.
Yes.
So they have to have a reason for him to not be there, to not character assassinate that relationship. And deportation is a fairly strong reason that he's not looking, like he can't.
Yeah. So is Maddie in the comics? Is she like, does she have rich parents?
She does, and she is J. Jonah Jameson's niece, which they reference.
Yeah, that because when she was like, I can call my uncle, but that's another thing about the whole nobody is looking for them. Oh, he'd be looking. The minute he saw her face on TV, there would be 24/7 nonstop reporting.
Well, maybe that explains how the girls missing, their disappearance got reported in the Daily Bugle so quickly, because they've been gone for like 2 hours and it is already the front page of the Daily Bugle.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, another way they could have improved the movie was give J.K. Simmons a cameo.
Maybe they could.
I would have been. Yeah, I would have been like, no, like in any multiverse. I'm just going to assume that J. Jonah Jameson is J.K. Simmons at this point. It's like, sure, why not? Yeah,
has been kidnapped by this menace.
Well, this would have been pre-Spider-Man too, so he wouldn't have had that to fall back on. Actually, that.
But he could.
I don't know.
He could call Madam Web the menace, and
yes,
he's always been like this.
Yes, no, that would have been a brilliant move on their part, and I don't know. It's fine. I don't know. So the ending, the three girls are. They're at Cassie's apartment, I guess. And are they all like living together now? Has she like adopted them? Like what is going on at the end here? Like just logistically.
I don't think that they all live with her. I think they are all just friends now, and because like they,
like I would imagine maybe she adopted or legally, yeah,
Anya.
like legally taking custody of Anya, at least until she turns 18. But like
informal custody, because I guess Anya doesn't legally exist.
Right.
yeah, yeah, and but like I don't know, the rest of it. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, all right. So they hang out and they're going to be the birds of prey, apparently, or well, would have become the birds of prey if I don't see this movie getting a sequel. I don't, I really don't.
I thought that Cassandra's interaction with the girls at the climax of the movie when she rescues them was going to trigger powers in them. Even if it was just sort of alluded to at the end, you see Sweeney's weaving something with her fingers or whatever. But like, so that's the other thing is like, if the Ezekiel storyline doesn't happen because he's dead, then what is the origin of these girls and their powers? Like, do they go to his house afterwards and find the spider and get bitten, all three of them? That seems very,
what do we think? What do we think of the plot line that Ezekiel is having these images of these women being his killer, and that they all become Spider Women, that they're the one that kills them, and then it turns out that it's Cassandra, that it's Cassie essentially, and that she's like she tried to say something that I felt tried to lampshade the issue, which is like, you've been obsessing over them when it should have been me, kind of thing. I don't know, like I feel like there's a kind of sleight of hand at work here that doesn't quite really fly for me. And I mean, they gloss it over and move on pretty quickly, but it was one of those things that I'm like, what did you do that for? I don't know. What do you guys think of it?
You're going to have this problem every time you do like any kind of time travel or visions of the future movie where, like, well, if Marty went back and met his mom, then how do they, it just like, you just kind of have to roll with this one. I didn't give that a lot of thought because I just
Fair
think
enough.
that's just a trope. That's just how the genre rolls.
Fair enough.
I think
Maenad?
that we see that she can change. We know she can change the visions of the future. That's the whole point. That's why it's worthwhile to have them. The whole pigeon lives. But I do feel like the moment that the moment her powers get triggered, there should be like the dream should have been slightly different. Instead of he's had this dream his whole life that these girls are going to kill him, and it's always the same dream, always the same scenario. I think as soon as her getting her powers is the moment that path diverges. Or possibly the night he chases them and the moment she rescues them, the moment she becomes involved in this, the dream should have changed. Because the paths are different now. And they could have done some really cool stuff with him going to sleep that night and the dream is different, but now he's dying younger. And now she's involved. And that would have been, that would have been made more sense with the way they were handling future visions and stuff like that.
Maybe when he told the fatally gullible NSA agent with whom he slept before telling her he dreams every night of his own death, that maybe he was exaggerating. Maybe he actually only has this dream every month.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, at this point, we don't have a reason to disbelieve him, though, at least.
He has poison hands, and I've never trusted anyone with poison hands.
What do we think of the? Okay, so I'm going to preface this by just saying something that got a laugh from my friends that were with me when we saw this. But as we know, Cassandra sees into the future and then can, go back and change things. Okay. And It's not always consistently displayed, but we get the gist essentially. And when she tells the 3 teenagers, "I need you to stay here for 3 hours and not do anything stupid," where everyone laughed at that point. I laughed a lot at that point because, again, I work with teenagers and I love working with teenagers, but man, they do not think about the consequences of their actions, And so it was just like, lady, you are setting this up, and I think you are. She comes back. She goes to the diner where they've gone. Ezekiel shows up, kills them, and then she flashes back to the point where she discovers them not at the site where she left them. And I said at that point, "Cassie, this is the part where you take the car and you drive it into the restaurant." And like a minute later, that's exactly what happened. And when she crashed through at the first patch of quiet, I basically did an impression of Bender from Futurama, and I went, "Called it!" And like, I don't know, like at that point, I was just like, okay, I'm psychic now, and I see what's coming, so I'm just going to have some fun with it. But afterwards, she has that she has that psychic dream meeting with Ezekiel. And I guess what I'm wondering here is, like, is he psychic too? Is it because he poisoned her that they're able to have this conversation? What is going on here? How is this happening? How are they able to interact with each other?
I can see how she on the web, the web that is the psychic connection with probabilities. I think they both rest on it.
They're both on that psychic web of probabilities. He got the physical abilities, so he's got a very narrow connection to it. And I think then the fact that they physically interacted is how he can connect to her, but also because she's got a much broader connection. So she's got a very broad web coming out from her that he can find.
So they know each other from the web. Like that's
okay.
Well, what I want to know is they had that conversation and he recognized who she was. He immediately knew that he was the person that killed her mom, and that the baby had survived. First of all, wow, good call, boy. You got a good memory, dude. But he didn't then decide that meant that she might be a threat to him.
Yeah, I know, right?
He killed her mom. And
I mean,
I don't know about you, but if you told me you were the person that killed my parent, I'd probably decide to start coming after you. Like,
I mean, maybe he just saw himself as that much more powerful, and your abilities mean nothing to me.
I know how I'm gonna die, so it's clearly not you.
Oh,
I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
Only the girls are the threat. Yeah. That is a way of.
So everybody, this is Trouble. She's a producer on the Webline podcast.
Is she named after the controversial Spider-Man's Parents miniseries written by Brian Michael Bendis in the late 90s?
No, she is not. She is. She was given that name by my fiance, who delayed the naming of our cats for some time, and then just basically said, "Oh, she's Trouble," and the name stuck. If I'd given her a name, it would have been something like, Creamsicle or something like that. But no, she's Trouble. She lives up to her name, and I love her. It's funny because about this time last year, I was struggling to keep her alive, and we managed to save her, but it's partially because we managed to save her that I was like, okay, that Spider-Man podcast that I keep thinking about doing, I should kick myself in the ass and get it underway. Hi.
I'm so glad that she's doing well. I wonder if the solution to her problems ended up being peptides. Like,
I don't know. No, The solution was a 2-week stay in an animal hospital.
Mm.
And I'm still paying that down. So, but yeah, I couldn't let her go. She'll be 6 this year, so she's still a very young kitty. All right, okay, sweetie. Daddy is doing a podcast. I need to put you down now. Okay, okay. I love you very much, but I'm afraid you can't be here right now. All right. No, don't try to lay down. Come on. Come on. I love you. Okay, all right. Well, hopefully that was entertaining. So, let me think. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say about this movie. I mean, we've been over the issues that we all have with it. We've talked about the things that we actually do like, and I do feel that there is more to like about this movie than Morbius, and that's not a high bar. Okay, that's not a high bar, but there are people out there saying that this movie is worse than Morbius, and I don't think that's correct. I'm not going to denigrate people who say that this is worse than Morbius. Everyone is welcome to their own opinion. But I feel like a lot of the individual characterizations in this movie were better than in Morbius. I feel like the action sequences were a lot more fun. You know, frankly, I kind of love the part where she had Anya electrocute the vehicle right when Ezekiel was about to land on it. Like, I thought that was fun, and I thought the line, "Okay, you're." Yeah, like I liked that. That was fun. That was funny to me. So
I liked that, but why? One thing that pissed me off about this movie was CPR is actually first of all, manual CPR does not work most of the time. It can, but manual CPR works about 1 time in 100. And ADE, like what they had in the ambulance, works about 1 time in 10.
Mm-hmm.
And they at one point had someone in an ambulance that had an ADE, and they were doing manual compressions on the person. The only time that ADE ever gets used, despite CPR being a magic button that works like 5 times over the course of this movie, the only time they actually use the ADE is as a weapon.
The only justification that I can think of for that is that perhaps the girls just didn't understand or know enough about what an ADE was.
It's not the girls that failed to use the ADE. Like, there is a moment where there is medical personnel doing compressions in an ambulance.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't catch that. So, but you know, I don't have an explanation for it either. So,
I mean, I get that CPR is magic in movies. Everybody knows that. In movies, CPR almost always works. But you have E, and those work better, and the only time you use it is as a weapon. Well, it was a cool use of it as a weapon, and I did like that. I just wish they had used it for its intended purpose at some point.
That's fair. That is completely fair. I guess, I mean, if we have anything else we want to say about this movie, let's go ahead and do it. If we don't, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the where I would put this on a tier list. So.
I've got one more really quick one. I really appreciate that all 5 of the film's principal characters wear clothing that is a callback to their comic book costumes.
So props to the costuming, I guess.
Indeed. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, Maenad, anything else before we move on?
Actually, I have a question. Joe, were there any other spoilery Easter eggs you wanted to mention? Because you talked about seeing a bunch at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, yeah. I made myself careful notes, and now I have to go back through. So, but certainly, like the costumes, I think it's funny that the film is fictionally set in 2003.
Yes.
And that it must be because like that's how you get Peter, of age and so forth. But also the principal storyline that uses all of these characters, like Matty Franklin's origin in The Gathering of the Five and stuff, is a comic book story from 2003, which is also when Ezekiel first appears. So like
Okay.
they did a nice job of just sort of finding this little niche and been like, all right, like we are doing Spider-Man of the early 2000s. Let's get it all in there. You know what I mean?
I didn't realize that. I remember explicitly asking, why are they doing a period piece in 2003?
In 2003, yeah. But
Joe, I'm sorry. I think I might need to push back here, though.
Yeah, for sure.
As best I can tell, Ezekiel appeared in Amazing Spider-Man before 9/11, actually. The reason I know that is because he introduces himself to Peter. Peter fights Morlun, and directly after that fight, when Peter lays down, he's exhausted from his fight with Morlun, and he collapses into bed after taking a bunch of painkillers. That's when Aunt May finds him. And then right after that is when the Twin Towers issue of Amazing Spider-Man came out. So
the
I
internet
think
tells me
he
that
appeared.
Ezekiel first appeared in 2001.
Yeah. So I think that's when he. I don't.
So
yeah. So sorry, that's just instinctive knowledge that I have.
It's a good clarification. I cling to the point though because it is
okay.
It is that absolutely the same era.
He's from that era. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, sorry, got a nitpick.
No, that's that is what we are here for, is nitpicking.
Yes. Yes. We are here to pick nits.
My single favorite comic book, gun to my head, if I had to pick a single issue that I treasure, it is Avengers Annual number 15. It is a story in which the Avengers fight Freedom Force, basically the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And at this time, Julia Carpenter is on Freedom Force. She was briefly a member of the Brotherhood. I don't know if
okay.
And so kind of two of the main standout characters in that issue are Julia Carpenter and Monica Rambeau as at the time Captain Marvel. And they both really kind of carry this issue, which I love so much. And I just think it is pretty amazing that in the past 6 months, both of these characters have appeared on like never would I have imagined that either one of these women was ever going to be in their own movie, but and yet here we are. So Maenad, this is kind of what you were talking about earlier, sometimes it's nice when people are forced to dig a little deeper because there's some really good stuff out there that they adapt. So I feel like this movie is very much a time capsule of a particular slice of Spider-Man history. They just kind of reached in and they're like, oh, you want the early 2000s? Here you go. Here's all of those little bits. Check. So yeah, I liked it. I enjoyed this movie for what it was. I certainly am not going to put it in my top 5, but I had a good time with it. So
okay, all right, Maenad.
Yeah, a lot of it was fun. The girls, I think, were definitely the best part of it. I've always had a soft spot for Anya, and so it was fun to see her actually in a movie. It definitely, as we've spent the last 2 hours discussing, had its issues.
Yes.
But, I mean, I don't want those 2 hours of my life back.
There you go.
Which is kind of how I felt coming out of Morbius. So, as big as the plot holes were, these were plot holes you could drive a semi-truck through, not a super tanker.
Which she did at one point. Yeah. Dude, Cassandra's knack for vehicular manslaughter is top tier here.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I think I made a comment about that in the lobby too. This
I think you did.
He really likes vehicular manslaughter.
Well, and if you could see the future and you could make it happen, dude, like, I'm scared of a person that can do that. Okay.
When she's racing to the diner to save the girls in the car, she's stuck behind a log truck, and I kept thinking about Final Destination. I was like, is this supposed to be like a nod because it's about seeing the future, but also about preventing your own death? And it's a log, like, you know. And then I thought, like, oh, I'm overthinking it. But I spent
that entire bit waiting for one of those logs to come loose. I was certain that was going to happen, and then she goes to go around it, and there are headlights coming at her, and she gets back behind it. Like, I was seriously shocked that those logs stayed on that truck.
Final Destination 2 was released in 2003.
I haven't seen any of the Final Destination movies. Are they Sony movies?
Oh, what a good question.
Because if they are, then it's easy for me to believe that. Otherwise,
New Line Cinema.
No, okay. Someone at Sony, you just probably saw them and was like, yeah, let's do that. I could see that. And Sith Apple just responded with New Line, so. All right. Okay. Well, if there is nothing else, I'm gonna go ahead and move on and just do the tier list rating here. Whenever we review a movie, I basically stick it on a theoretical tier list that I have for both Spider-Man and Spider-Man adjacent movies, which I haven't gotten to any of those yet, but I'm about to. I probably will get to Venom and possibly even Venom Let There Be Carnage this year. So they're eventually going to make it onto the list. But essentially, S is some of the singular best Spider-Man or Spidey adjacent movies out there. Spoiler, there's nothing in the S tier that's Spidey adjacent yet. A tier, really, really, really good. Not quite legendary or iconic, but still really good. B, good. C, it was all right. D, not so much. And then F is Morbius. All right. I'm serious. Like, I didn't have an F tier for a long time, and then I saw Morbius, and I'm like, guess what? I'm inventing a whole new tier for you. I'm inventing a whole new low for you. All right. This movie is not worse than Morbius. This movie is not even as bad as Morbius. And as we've said so many times on this episode, that's not a high bar. All right. This is a movie that has enjoyable moments and enjoyable aspects to it. However, it asks you to leave so much of your brain at the door, even if you're a non-Spider-Man fan. I feel like the more you know about Spider-Man lore and mythology, and I believe Maenad pointed this out to me the other day, the more you know about Spider-Man lore and mythology, the angrier these movies have the potential to make you. And that was certainly true in my case, at least in part. But I still found myself enjoying it. However, with the terrible logistics of just the script in general, the focus on plots and characters who really do nothing for the story, the meandering and not so great explanations of, for example, Cassandra's powers, and again, how they treat Ezekiel, because this is my rating and I get to be opinionated about that. The Madam Web is the first D tier Spider-Man adjacent movie to make my tier list. Amazing Spider-Man 2 almost got a D tier listing from me. I didn't quite have the heart to give it a D rating, but this one gets the D tier rating. And again, there were things I enjoyed about it. but this movie is yet again another example of Sony trying to create future content and string moviegoers along, and they subvert so many elements of their storytelling to this that it brings down the quality of the entire experience and essentially makes me continue to repeat the call that they just need to give up the Spider-Man license and let Marvel have it back. So,
see, for me,
what would
this
you
movie is S tier, but then that S crumbles and falls and crushes the main villain at the end. and and they end up on the C tier. So
okay, all right, C tier. All right,
yeah.
Maenad.
I'm right on the line between C and D. But I think I have to fall on the D side because, like you said, it asks you to leave so much of your brain at the door, but also because it could have been so much better.
You're absolutely right.
So many
you're absolutely
opportunities where they could have done, where there were two ways they could have gone on a thing, and they consistently chose the worst way.
Yes.
They consistently made choices in plot, in characterization, in character motivation, that there were obvious alternatives they could have taken that would have made more sense, made the film more cohesive. And I don't actually mind the fact that this movie clearly is setting up future team-up movies. I mean, I think that I don't condemn Sony for that as a thing. The very end of Iron Man has Nick Fury coming out saying, I want to talk to you about the Avengers initiative. Planting the idea that you're going for a series in the first film is not a sin to me. They could have done it so much better. And part of the way you plant the fact that you're looking at a series is you put seeds of what that's going to be. And they chose to spend more time looking at Peter's birth and parents instead of planting any of the seeds that they really should have planted for this to go forward.
Sony makes bad farmers. Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, I think that is pretty much the totality of our review and reaction to Madam Web. Thank you guys for joining me for this. I had a lot of fun. I knew that by bringing Maenad and Joe here that we were going to have a good discussion that was going to be both wide-ranging and deep and touch upon all of the little minutiae that we all know about. So I enjoyed the conversation more than I enjoyed the movie, but
it ran about the same amount of time too.
Wow, yeah. So this is not Maenad's and my first rodeo. This is probably what, the third really bad Marvel movie that we've seen together.
I mean, and I think we spent longer in the lobby after Fan Four Stick bitching about it than the movie actually ran.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, totally did. So, but anyways, I want to thank you guys for doing this this review with me, and let me think. I don't know. Do we want to do a web spinners recommendation this week? Do you guys want to do one? Do you have anything that you want to recommend to people?
I should have been more prepared. I will recommend Avengers Annual number 15.
I mean, that's perfectly fair. Okay.
Check your back issues, and then you need to buy, while you're at the comic book store, you also need to buy West Coast Avengers Annual number 1, because it's a 2-part story and it finishes there. But yeah, you can go read that for me.
And that was what was it?
That's where the Avengers fight Freedom Force, and it's also
Force, right?
It's the issue. I mean, and now I'm going to spoil it, but it's fine. It's 30 years old. It's the issue where Julia Carpenter quits Freedom Force, and she doesn't join the Avengers in that issue, but it is what leads to her becoming an Avenger.
Okay.
Like that, the seeds of that storyline are all in that issue. So
okay,
because then
all right.
she quits Freedom Force to help the Avengers, and then a little later on, the Avengers call her up and are like, "Hey, come work with us." So like that's her initiation into the team, basically.
All right, I'd say that's a good recommendation, actually. So, all right, Maenad, you don't have to if you don't want to.
So I know that you do a lot of gaming, and or a fair amount of gaming. I'm going to actually take the time to recommend my other obsession.
Okay.
If anybody has played Warframe,
Warframe.
Warframe does it. I don't play it because I'm terrible at games, as Tony knows. But I've watched people play it. And one of the cool things about it is that it includes a lot of, they write music that plays like sea shanties, that plays like protest songs. Really cool in-world music for the game. So that's cool. And it's a good game and you should play it. But
it's free. So yeah. And it's free. So
yeah. What I'm actually recommending, though, is a cover of one of the songs, Sleeping in the Cold Below, that is done by the simply most amazing a cappella group singing today, Voice Play. And they are one of my other obsessions. Tony knows I go around making people listen to them. So I'm going to take the time, because I didn't prepare anything else, and games kind of fits in. So I'm going to recommend that y'all go listen to that and wear your headphones.
Okay. All right, cool. For my recommendation this week, it's a video game. It's also free, and I've only been playing it for about 2 months. Fortnite, actually. My nephew got me to play it. I'm sorry?
Never mind.
Sorry. Okay, I got it finally. Second thought caught up with the first. But my nephew basically started playing it at the same time that I did, so we, I basically kind of got into it because of him. And here's the thing: I'm usually not a big fan of these types of like battle royale shooter style games. You'll never see me playing Call of Duty, for example. The reason that I like Fortnite as much as I do is simply because, one, it's, yes, you're shooting at each other and stuff, but it's a lot more stylized. Like when you die, there's no like blood or gore or anything. You just like collapse into a bunch of, computerized light, and your loot just kind of litters the floor, and people can go and pick it up and stuff. So there is that, but I think the main reason that I have kind of gotten into Fortnite as much as I have is simply that it is absurd. Like it's absurd in a way that I really like. The first vehicle that I think I ever drove while playing Fortnite was it was like a motorized human hamster ball wheel thing, and it had like a frickin' plunger attached to it that you could shoot out into a tree and then hang from the tree while you're in this human hamster wheel. It was absurd, and I was like, okay, all right, I can get into it. I also have to say the reason that the reason that I listened to the artist known as The Weeknd is because of Fortnite, because they've added several new modes to the game that are like Guitar Hero or Rock Band. And so, I've been taking part in those modes. They've also got a Lego mode that is awesome. And you can have a variety of gaming experiences now that are not what Fortnite got really famous for. And so I like having those options as well. And currently, they've actually got like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series of quests in the game. And I'm loving that. I like to go and find the drops that actually contain like Leo's katanas or Michelangelo's nunchucks because they do a ridiculous amount of damage, and people shooting at you never expect you to just come up to them and start beating the crap out of them. It's so much fun. So Fortnite, it's getting a lot more diverse in the type of experience that it delivers to gamers. It's a little bit, it's becoming a little bit like Roblox in that sense. But I'm enjoying it. It has helped expand my pop cultural awareness, and I did finally find a Spider-Man skin that I can now run around in whenever I want. So it's fun. So highly recommend it. Give it a shot sometime. Almost literally, give it a shot. Anyway, all right. Well, and I think that brings us close to the end of the show. The webline streams on Sundays at 2 p.m. Next week, we will not be doing an episode as I will be taking a break. And I'm currently in planning for the next 5 block episodes of the show. So I'm not sure what episode I'll have or who my guest will be, but I can tell you that in 2 weeks on, March 4th? No, 3rd. March 3rd. That we'll be doing our next episode then. So stick around. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And in the meantime, I just want to again thank Joe and Maenad for joining me here today. This was, again, a great discussion of a not so great film. And, I really enjoy getting to have these kinds of conversations with you guys, like with all of my friends, everyone that I invite onto the podcast. Well, not everyone, but most of the people I invite are people that I know in real life that are, like people that I have a pre-existing relationship with. And I mean, like, Maenad and I have been friends for what, 15 years now? Something like that?
Oh, Lord. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably, yeah. Joe and I go even further back, actually. And Joe, what is it, almost 30 years at this point?
We met in 1997, so yeah, it's 27 years.
Yeah. And I think the last time I saw you was a few years ago at a friend's wedding, right?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, one of the things, again, that I really love about this podcast is I get to, even if we're not hanging out in person, I at least get to see your faces again. And we get to talk about these things and just kind of shoot the breeze and hang out. And so it's one of the reasons that I'm really glad that I am doing this podcast and continuing to do it. And I always have a lot of fun, but I want to make you guys, very much aware of how much your participation in this podcast means to me. So I again, when I say thank you for being here, I there's a whole lot of weight behind it. So I just want you to know that. So
absolutely, anytime.
All right.
Always
well.
Fun.
All right. Well, in any case, I think
except when you do the Morbius episode, actually, leave me off of that one.
I am wondering who I am going to get to do that one with me. I mean, like, I could ask Maenad, but the thing is, we've done Amazing Spider-Man 2, and now we're doing Madam Web. I don't know how much I want to keep traumatizing them. So,
I'm your bad movie friend.
We've seen plenty of good movies together too, but I feel like you can really take the bad movies apart pretty well. So, All right. In any case, thank you guys for being here, and thank you for listening. Until our next episode, I'll be wishing you a good day. Bye.